Hello and welcome. So this is a very short video about the City in the Clouds cue from The Empire Strikes Back, which I've just released, and Sibelius's Violin Concerto. There's a very famous passage in this. I'll make it a little bit bigger for you. So we can see this part here, and I'm going to play both and then discuss it. Here it comes. So that's that, and then this is Sibelius's Violin Concerto, which is in a different key. It's in D minor. And that's it. That's the only thing. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars, but of course this is in 2/2, whereas the original Cloud City cue is in 3/4. So what I did to compare them was to put them side by side and also transpose Sibelius' Violin Concerto up a minor sixth so that the notes, the actual pitches, were identical. And we can see that they are. The only difference really is the first note is a major second out. So instead of starting on a B flat, John Williams starts on a C. So instead of going, he starts. So the additional, or the difference is a major second and additional auxiliary note of that D flat. But otherwise, the rhythms pretty much are identical. So of course, this has to be halved in time. So we've still got sort of 3 beats and then 3 beats here as well as it is here. In fact, actually, I think that's 4 beats. Yes, and actually the rhythm is actually pretty different, actually. So beats aren't quite the same. But the pitches, as you can see, are. So that's Sibelius, and this is John Williams. So a similar ornament, but not quite the same. But it's very, very similar indeed, isn't it? So really the only difference is the rhythm and the accompaniment, of course, as well. So I hope that we can see the sort of very stark similarities. But also in the accompaniment, it is a little bit different. So we've got some sort of oscillation going on. We've got another oscillation here in cellos, but it's not in the violins because, of course, they've got the tune. And then we've got this additional sort of pad, I suppose, of horns with harmonic fudge and a little bit of that sort of Boba Fett theme as well. But I think the reference is very obvious and very clear when we've transposed this up a minor sixth. Interestingly enough, there'd be no problem with this in the US for works before 1978, which Sibelius, regardless of his death, the publication of the concerto, I think, was way before then. In European countries, of course, it's 70 years after the composer's death, which is very different. Yeah, the creative rights holder for Sibelius, which I think is Teosto, manages those works. But I think if they haven't made any complaint now, it's a bit frivolous to complain sort of 50 years or so after, or 40 years after the original Empire Strikes Back. But I think the reference is clear. So it'd be interesting to see whether Williams has sort of talked about it. I don't think he has, and I think it's not, the implication is not to use Sibelius' Violin Concerto and sort of pass it off. I think that's not right at all in the spirit of this. It's reverently referencing it and quoting it, really, with some slight changes which make it dissimilar, especially in the beats. So I don't think, if it ever got to court, I think you could probably argue it both ways. And both ways would be convincing arguments, for and against. The convincing argument for is that the pitches are almost identical, but they're not quite. So it's not a massively strong argument, because but they're not quite. Um, and the argument against it is that the beats are the same and the key's different, the time signature's different, the accompaniment different, and the context is completely different. It's not trying to say, oh, here's Sibelius' Violin Concerto. It's just a reference. So I think that probably wraps that up. But I think it poses sort of interesting questions about musical quotation. One very famous one, which I'll talk about another time, is this one, which are the first four notes of a Bach fugue. They're also the Kyrie from Mozart's Requiem, and it's also Handel's Messiah as well, and with his stripes. So all three used within the space of about 70 years of each other. Nobody was suing anybody in those days. It was quite normal to quote sort of typical fugal subjects, this sort of thing. This is different because it's an actual composed tune. It's not a sort of stock phrase by any stretch of the imagination. And I think it's, as I say, I think it's quite obvious what's going on as well. So that is those are my thoughts about it. I think I just wanted to do a quick video in addition to the queue, but not part of the queue, because it's sort of separate issue really, but an interesting one, and I hope you've enjoyed it.